Tennessee, like many states across the country, have laws that target people living with HIV. We call these criminal laws HIV criminalization, and they make otherwise legal conduct illegal because of somebody's HIV positive status, or else they create penalty enhancements, again, because of somebody's HIV positive status. So in Tennessee, there's an offense called criminal exposure that criminalizes, and I'm quoting, intimate contact with another, blood or organ, or other bodily tissue donation, and also the exchange of needles or injection paraphernalia if a person is living with HIV. A person found guilty under Tennessee's criminal exposure statute is liable for a felony on their record, years in prison, and until very recently, mandatory sex offender registration.
I'm Lashanda Salinas, and I'm 42 years old, and I've been living with HIV for 25 years. In 2006, I had a relationship with a gentleman that I told I was HIV positive. Actually, we met on a chat line. We didn't see each other at first because we were over the phone getting to know each other. And at that time, I let him know that I was HIV positive. He was fine with it. Relationship went on for about 6 months, and I decided that I wanted to call it quits. I did. Thought everything was okay until the police walked into my job. And they asked, could they speak to Lashanda Salinas? And I told them, I'm her. How can I help you? And they told me they had a warrant for my arrest for not telling someone that I was HIV positive. I knew in my heart I was innocent because I told. It was just a he said, she said situation. And the judge and the DA decided to believe him. When I registered, I had 24 hours to go to the home office and register as a sex offender. Right there, my world stopped because nobody told me at all I had to register as a sex offender when I accepted this plea.
In Tennessee, prostitution is normally a misdemeanor offense unless you're a person living with HIV and you know your HIV positive status. Then you're liable for, again, a felony conviction, years in prison, and until recently, mandatory lifetime sex offender registration. Now, neither law requires actual transmission or the intent to transmit. And in fact, that aggravated prostitution statute criminalizes behaviors that could never be a transmission route. For example, a conversation about sex work is enough to sustain a conviction. Erogenous touching is enough to sustain a conviction. A conversation about sex work and touching somebody erogenously are not HIV transmission routes. The law doesn't care about that. What it cares about is a person living with HIV who knows their status, engaging in certain behaviors.
My name is Tiffany Moore. In Tennessee, when you get arrested for just regular prostitution charges, you're forced to take an HIV test through the court. You can deny it, but you'll just sit in jail for 1129. And who's going to do that, really? In that moment, you're just going to, take the plea, take the test. And I regret that. I regret that. I didn't have the knowledge then, which I know really there was no knowledge back in 2000 to not take a test. I didn't have nothing to hide, That's all she wrote. I was just continuously targeted through stings. All my arrests were through prostitution stings. On my aggravated prostitution, I don't have a victim. I don't have anybody who's ever tested positive. Used protection when I could. I disclosed when I could. Anyone from the streets that are watching this that remember me know that I disclosed quite often. So it wasn't a secret, and I wasn't intentionally. There was no intent. So I was charged with aggravated prostitution in 2001, and I was sentenced to 4 years. Then again in 2005, another 4 years. And then again in 2008. But this one was a setup. I actually walked away from this one. I was not guilty. The DA knew it.
In June 2022, my organization, the Williams Institute, released a report on HIV criminalization in Tennessee along with a co-author, Robin Lennon Deering, who's at the University of Memphis. That report tried to understand the who and how of HIV criminalization in the state. And I'll say it was a challenging report to write for a couple of reasons. First, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was very reluctant to give us any data, and so we had to get creative. Second, the data that we did get, which were actual police reports of people arrested, convicted, and put on the sex offender registry because of one of these HIV crimes. It was painful reading. People in their most vulnerable moments being, arrested, dealing with the criminal legal system, and having in front of them incarceration and eventually sex offender registration. Well, what we discovered when we dug into these police reports was that for aggravated prostitution, the overwhelming majority of people arrested, prosecuted, convicted, put in prison, and then on the sex offender registry for life were, the allegation goes, this is the police's own narrative, somebody from the overwhelmingly Memphis police in their vice squad went undercover, went up to somebody they thought engaged in sex work. And the allegation was they had a conversation about sex in exchange for money, or and it breaks my heart, in one case, for a place to stay for the night. Well, that was enough for the police to give a takedown notice. The person was arrested. They were taken to Memphis PD. And then when the person's HIV status was learned, what would have been a misdemeanor suddenly became a felony charge. And again, all of these people were eventually convicted and put on the sex offender registry. Now, in none of these police reports that we read was there any allegation of any sexual contact at all. The allegation, again, was a conversation between an undercover police officer and somebody who they suspected was engaged in sex work.
My name is Michelle Anderson. I want to tell my age when I don't. I am on the earlier side of 40. I'll say that. I'm not 40 yet, but I'm just getting towards there. The later 30s, I'll say that. So I eventually ended up moving to Memphis in 2007. And at that time, I began my transition. And also at that time, not knowing that there weren't too many opportunities for trans women in the South, here in Memphis, to get jobs and everything else like that. The first thing that I ended up doing was going into sex work. October 30th of 2010, I was arrested for attempted to commit aggravated prostitution. I had already was aware of my status, and at that time I was undetectable because I was in treatment. I was taking a tripler. With being arrested, I didn't know about the laws. The public defender that I did get wasn't able to just sit down and take the time with me and discuss what all the options were. Me not knowing that, okay, if I plead guilty to this, I'm going to be on the registry for the rest of my life. I did not know that. The reason for me saying, okay, I'm guilty, I wanted to go home so bad. But my biggest thing was I wanted to get out. I need to get out this jail. I'm a trans woman in a jail of men, and I feel so uncomfortable. I want to go home. I will say I did it. I don't care. I don't care. I just want to go home. So not knowing the law and how, when they say you're going to be on the sex offender registry, this is not a thing to where that, okay, well, maybe one day it'll just fall off. I was listed as a violent sex offender, meaning that I could not get off the registry until the dirt was thrown on me and my death certificate was served.
I want to zoom in for a second on these aggravated prostitution police narratives. So again, the police themselves alleged that there was a conversation about sex work in exchange for something of value, money, or as I mentioned, one person, the negotiation was a place to stay for the night. Well, the police in these narratives also described the alleged sex act that was negotiated. And what we found was that in half of these police reports, the riskiest sex act proposed was receptive oral sex for the undercover police officer. Now, the CDC describes receptive oral sex if the person living with HIV is not in treatment as negligible. Basically, the probability is so low that they can't assign a number to it. And of course, that transmission risk drops to 0 if the person is in medication treatment and virally suppressed. We also had the dollar amount that the police allegedly negotiated. And the average dollar amount was about $15. That indicates to us, at least, that these are people in extreme, at least financial distress. And when we go into the pre-sentencing reports, that is after a person has been convicted, there's a long-form interview that they conduct, that the prosecutor's office conducts and Department of Corrections conducts with the person convicted. And they dig into the person's background. What we saw over and over was that the people convicted of aggravated prostitution and also criminal exposure had incredibly difficult childhoods, adulthoods, difficulties with mental health, physical health, substance use, difficulties with employment. And so it both breaks my heart and is no surprise to me that somebody in such extreme circumstances might also be engaging in activities that are not sanctioned by law.
If you know that I'm out here working and I'm selling my body to make money so that I can live, then you lock me up and put me in jail and expect me to pay for a lawyer when I'm already struggling to make ends meet. Then you give me a lawyer. Then you give me a lawyer that really doesn't have the time to even discuss what all of these aspects. Because even like, if I come and present a paper, like you've been locked up for some months, I come and present a paper to you and say, hey, just say you're guilty, we'll let you out tomorrow. I'm guilty. But instead of saying, well, if you plead guilty, this is what will happen. Now we have to weigh these options out. Like, y'all, I don't know if it's more of people aren't aware that some people, sometimes you have to play the cards that you're dealt. It's the hand I was dealt. Even though there was not a sexual offense, I would say, committed against a person, a child, or elderly person or anything, I was labeled with someone who does things like that.
But with being a sex offender, you can't be within 1,000 feet of a school. You can't be at a daycare. If I go in the grocery store, I have to go either in the next aisle or across the grocery store and wait till that child is gone. And it was hard to go to church because if there were kids and I wanted to sit out in the audience with the members, I couldn't do that. I had to remain in the choir stand next to my pastor because he was over me.
Because the family goes through the registry too. The family can't have you at events. The family can't see you here. The family can't. It affects so many, and it's life altering.
It doesn't just affect you, it affects the people around you. And it's not even like family. You may have friends, you may have coworkers, you may have people who you chat with on the phone, or people who you serve in the community, or how all of that, though HIV affects all of us.
If it's one thing if you tell me I can't, I don't know, live within 1,000 feet of a strip club or a porn shop, I can dig that kind of goes in hand with, but children, everything was children, everything was carnivals, schools, even porn, all that stuff, it was everything. Internet, I had to download an internet monitoring software, and they monitored my stroke, so anything I did on the internet got a read receipt sent. So I couldn't even look up personal medical, I couldn't even look up anything, because everything I did, a read receipt got sent. It's just ridiculous. And also, it's called Covenant Eyes. So at the same time you got the software, you're now getting those, what do you call those, algorithm. So now it recognizes that you've got this software on your phone. So now you're getting porn addiction commercials all the time, because now it assumes that you've got addiction to porn. And so out of the blue, my daughter's on her tablet watching YouTube, and a sex porn addiction ad comes on, because there's no choice, because I had to have it on her software too. All laptops, tablets, and phones in the house had to have the software. So that means all of us got the commercials. So I was constantly on guard, because Trojan and it was constantly, those commercials would come up about sex addiction. And thank you for being a Covenant Eyes subscriber.
We found a couple of other interesting things when we dug into the data. We found that the majority of people arrested were identified as Black women in the police reports. And we suspect that if people were able to choose their own gender identity in the police reports, that actually it would be greater, that we think both overwhelming majority of people arrested were either cisgender Black women or trans Black women. We also looked at criminal exposure, again in Memphis, in Shelby County, and we found there that 100% of people who had been arrested, charged, prosecuted, convicted, and then put on the sex offender registry were Black. And the gender diversity was a little bit greater for criminal exposure than for aggravated prostitution, but the racial disparity was even starker. When we stepped back and we looked at the sex offender registry as a whole, what we found was, again, this disproportionality. Black people were overrepresented among HIV convictions on the sex offender registry. Whether you looked at the share of Black people as a percent of the state population or as a percent of people living with HIV in the state. And we also found that for both of these charges, Shelby County, that is Memphis, was really dramatically overrepresented. That suggests to us that the enforcement of these two laws, criminal exposure and aggravated prostitution, have much more to do with policing practice than with public health or safety.
I ended up speaking, working with Hope House and working with the University of Memphis. There's a professor of social work, Dr. Robin Lennon-Deering. We spoke a lot about how we had a workshop for women living positive living with HIV. So in my story, I did end up disclosing how the justice system was really unfair to individuals living with HIV, and how with all the knowledge and everything that we have, like no one is really working to try to update these laws, or to say, hey, let's study some more science to see how this is going, how things change, how things have changed. So we were discussing that, and she was like, I'm very upset to hear that all of this is going on. And she's like, I'm going to do some research, and I'm going to see is there something that I can do. When I say that, that put a fire under her, which put a fire up under me. So it was like we were on the same skillet. Like we was just, to where that she shared how that was so unfair to a lot of the law professors at the University of Memphis, or to other colleagues that she had, to where they got the ball rolling to form the Tennessee Modernization Coalition. And when they started that, I was a part of trying to help get that started, along with Tiffany Moore in Knoxville. So there was a lot of pushback from people from the state, people from the area in Nashville, people from here, just all over the state, on how to come up with a better solution on how to make these laws more modern.
And started telling my story, and and once I told my story, people were just kind of like, I didn't realize, they didn't know that this charge was ever put on the registry, and it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. So that's where the ball started rolling, to remove aggravated prostitution from the sex offender registration, because it doesn't make sense.
If somebody told me 16 years ago, you were going to be out here telling your story and people are going to listen and support you, I would have told them, you're really crazy, because I'm too shy to do this. I don't like talking in front of people.
You can't pass a bill that you don't understand. You shouldn't be passing a bill. So stories, you got to have, whether you want to see, or I had one senator who we went in to have him sign the bill, the original bill. He would not sign it. He was one of the lead on the sex order. He goes, no, if it's on the registry, it belongs on the registry. Like, crap. He was that one that you avoid, like you just knew that you were not. And all of a sudden we got the call. And I went in, and he said, sit down. And I sat down. He goes, tell me again, why is this on the registry? He didn't understand why it was on the registry. So Senator, to slow down on your bills. Dinner's going to be fine. Your game, whatever you got to get to, is going to be there. You are literally about to sign off on millions of lives.
We are happy, however, to learn that the legislature in Tennessee in 2023 for criminal exposure and 2024 for aggravated prostitution decided to remove that mandatory sex offender registration. Unfortunately, the process for coming off the registry is not so simple. And so people, even if they have the right now to come off the registry, are not automatically being removed. So the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the state legislature, could say, we'll just go through that list and automatically remove everybody who's only on there for aggravated prostitution or only on there for criminal exposure. They've chosen not to do that. So the burden is on the people who are on the registry to find a path off of it now. The good news is that there is a pathway off the sex offender registry. The bad news is that people might not know the path exists, or they might not know how to get on that path and what steps they need to take.
You can't just go get any attorney. And before the coalition that got me the attorney I had already called, I don't know how many lawyers. None wanted to touch it. They did not want to touch it. Just because it was so new of a bill, that was going to be the first lawyer that processed the paperwork. It was going to be a lot of footwork. It was a challenge because I had 2 charges. I had I had Knox County that put me on the sex offender registration, and then Nashville put me on the sex offender registration, but they upgraded me to violent at that time because I had caught the charge after 2014. So when we went to Nashville, because we were trying to avoid Knox County at all costs, the judge just was like, yeah, and just signed, and I was off the registry, and I celebrated. My lawyer called. Nope. TBI said I have to come off Knox County. So we had to start all over. The whole process had to start all over again for Knox County. But my lawyer was amazing. He did not tell me he processed the paperwork through Knox County because he knew I was not okay. And all of a sudden I got the call December 17th. I got an email and it was removal of the SOR in Knox County, and I was like, I sat there just holding my phone like in complete shock. I'm like, no, he's just sending this to the judge. The judge hasn't signed this yet. But no, the minute he sent it, about 2 seconds later, he called and confirmed that TBI had released me off the registry with the judge and everything. And so I ran on the TBI SOR site, and I searched myself like 5,000 times, every which way you can search on the registry, and I was gone. And then I can go to a park.
On July 7th of 2023, I finally came off the sex offender registry after 16 years. The first thing you have to do is you either write or email the TBI, which I did both. The bill was signed on the 17th. On the 18th, I sent my request to come off by email and a letter. And then I realized that, the law's not going to go into effect until the 1st, so they're really not going to do anything right now. But on July 2nd, I sent another email and another letter. And my best friend, Tiffany, she called me, and I had taken a nap that day, and she was blowing up my phone. And I finally got up and I called her. I said, Tiffany, what is it? You have blowed me up all day. She's like, go research your name on the sex offender registry. I'm like, girl, I know you're not lying. I'm like, don't play with me. This is too much. Don't play with me. And I went and looked. I could not find my name anywhere. Nowhere at all. So the next day I called the agency that I register with, and they told me we got the email on July 7th that you are no longer on the sex offender registry.
I received my letter on July 3rd, which I called my mom. She was crying. My sister, she was crying. My best friend, she was so happy. And I was just like, oh, yes, this is my Independence Day. Forget July 4th. July 3rd is my Independence Day. And I cried that day. But the day after, which was the 4th, I was like, wait a minute. Wait. Did this happen for real? So I had to really go back and reread the letter. I read the letter 5 times just to make sure I'm seeing that my name, my date of birth, I'm officially released off the sex offender registry in Tennessee. You still didn't set in. It didn't set in till yesterday when I had to go and report, and they ended up showing me the screen where it showed my profile and it said terminated. And the funny part about that whole yesterday and just seeing it, to hear the officers who work in the registry to say, congratulations, I hope you have a good life. after that happened, like I was so happy. I walked out the office and I was so happy, and like I had my nice little hair on and everything, because I was like, this is gonna be the last time you see me, you know. But when I walked out that office, I stood at the elevator for like 5 minutes. Like, I thought I pushed the button, but I stood there for 5 minutes. I was like, so you mean to tell me, out of 12 years of being restricted from doing whatever I wanted to do, travel, just, you know, if I want to have kids or whatever, you mean to tell me after 12 years, today is the day that I'm officially free? I felt that way before, like when I had to do my time in jail. Like, I'm finally free, I'm home. But to be in the free world and then you're finally free, I'm still getting used to the whole thing. But like I said, I still have that whole cautionary veil on in front of me, because I realize when a lot of people say that a lot of people, when you're institutionalized, that there's a mindset. I'm just honestly, like, that's my mindset. Like, I've been institutionalized.
Well, it happened on July 7th. On July 22nd, I had to do a photo shoot, and it was going to be in Centennial Park. So, as soon as when I come off, the first thing I did was do my photo shoot in the park with kids walking behind me. And it didn't seem real, because when a child would get next to me while I was doing my photo shoot, I would walk the other direction. But then I'd realize, you don't have to do that anymore. It's okay now.
It wasn't for nothing. You know, at least this advocacy is now assisting in the role and getting other lives back. You know, getting their, helping them find their joy and their freedom to be free.
Well, I want to leave a legacy of that I strived and I tried and I did what I could to help.
I've only been doing this for 2 years, but it's here. It's happening now. And this is my new chapter.
And I will say I have a new lease on life. No, I don't have no lease on life. They had a lease on me. I own my stuff again. I own myself. They had a lease on me for 12 years. I paid y'all. Now I done paid off my debt. I own myself. I own what I want to do. I own being Michelle, being that advocate, being an HIV advocate, being a housing advocate, being whoever I want to be. I'm eventually going to be a Barbie doll. And I said it, and I'm going to mean it. I don't care if I have to make it myself. I'm going to eventually be one myself. But I'm going to do all of that because now I'm back in a situation to where, like I said, I own my story. I own my life. And I own what I want to do and how I want people to see it.
I'm free.